understanding is beyond measure. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys of hell and death, and because I live, you shall live also. Family and friends, we have gathered here to praise God and to witness our faith as we celebrate the life of Earl Edwin Bud Moore. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us grace that in our pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. Let us pray. Eternal God, we praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their course in faith and now rest from their labor. We praise you for those dear to us whom we name in our hearts before you. This afternoon especially we praise you for Bud Moore, whom you have graciously received into your presence. To all of these grant your peace. Let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through the years, and bring us at last with them into the joy of your home, a home not made with human hands, but eternal in the heavens, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. One of the scriptures I would like to read to you this morning is from the Psalms. It's the 23rd Psalm, a very familiar psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God bless the reading and us hearing of his word. This afternoon, this morning as we gather here, is a time for us to reflect and remember the life of Bud Moore. And we'll invite his son, Robert, to come forward to give us his eulogy.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Wow. This is pretty awesome, and this is what he would have wanted. Everybody together talking and laughing. He always teased me for being the emotional one. Kind of like my mom. I guess that's what I'm going to be. There'll be flashes of it, so forewarned. Thank you all for coming. From the bottom of my heart, for my dad, for my daughters. This is a somewhat long eulogy. I'm somewhat long-winded. My dad could tell stories, but he was a master of brevity at the same time. I am not. I kind of got that from my mom. I'm his son, and I'm proud to say that I am. I'm sure he'd be pleased that everyone has come out to pay their respects and share your condolences and have a few laughs, quite possibly some at his expense. But I'm sure he'd revel in that. And as you know, my dad would much prefer a celebration than too somber of an affair. I can't make any promises there, as again, I'm sure I'll get emotional from time to time today, but I look forward to all of us sharing some great moments and memories of him. So to start, do any of these ring a bell? When you've said Bud, you've said it all. Travel light, freeze at night. Strong like bull. FSU one time. That will be the last time you ever hear this Gator say that. I just want you to know. You have to ease the edge. You need the right tool for the job. Give it a tooth. It's all about location, location, location. It's all about portion control. It's all about attention to detail. Evidently, it was all about a lot of things. Accelerate through the turn. Mishki Gubnabi. Where's Michelle Kefford and some of our family members? Okay, Aaron. We found out what that meant at the age of 13. Maddie and Mackenzie, I'll tell you when you're older. When I was bored, I would say, Dad, I don't have anything to do. He'd say, Mishki Gubnabi. And so would Grandma Booty, for that matter. If anybody else wants to know this over the age of 13, I'll tell you later. You'll stay warm as long as you keep your kidneys warm. That looks cattywampus. It's not level to the world. Willing seller, willing buyer. I can hear you've got too much paint on that roller. Make sure you paint over the holidays. I don't know that holiday is a real word, but when you first paint on a wall, and there are shades of where you didn't do the W's just right, and some white from the paint comes through, supposedly that's called a holiday. I believe it. We'll see if it's true. I have to look it up on Google. Here comes the monsoon. And this one, the only people that can predict weather in South Florida are damn fools and damn Yankees. By the way, I'm sure that there are a lot more people in South Florida right now that were prepared for Hurricane Matthew and several other hurricanes because of my dad's hurricane preparedness kit and list. And who could forget, how much wood could woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I know several of you out there racking your brains right now in the archives trying to remember the answer. Well, I'll share that one with you today, my friends. And after careful calibration and deliberation, Dad revealed quite some time ago that the answer is precisely 6 3/4 tons. And now you know. I'm sure some of you, if not all of these, have resonated with many of you. And you can probably close your eyes and hear him saying a few of them now too. I only had the privilege of knowing my dad for my 42 years on this earth, but I know some of you out there have known him much longer. You may have known him as Bud, Uncle Bud, Mr. Moore, Papa Moore, Grandpa, silly Grandpa, friend, partner, buddy, hero, or confidant. In whatever capacity, you all know that he was the eternal jokester, a humanitarian, and one of the most generous humans to ever live. He was a character, in the truest sense of the word. I mean, who else would wear that dashing fashion combo of a white cowboy hat, Columbia fishing shirt, and Magnum PR-like short shorts, all around Fort Lauderdale? He certainly was a memorable guy, not because of that cowboy hat, but because of his generous nature and his ability to acknowledge everyone, from the deli clerk at Publix, to Art at Layton's Garage, from Tiffany and Archie, where he got his hair cut for over 40 years, to his fellow veterans at the Legion, from the staff at Little Red's Barbecue, to his old dancing buddies at Roundup, and from his best friend down the street, Kirk, to the homeless hat lady on Los Alamos Boulevard. Bud Moore was born in 1943 as Earl Edwin Moore Jr., as the only child to Albina Bardis Moore and Earl Edwin Moore Sr. He was a husky young lad and spent much of his childhood on his grandparents' farm in South Deerfield, Massachusetts. I've heard many a story of the old barn, harvesting potatoes and tobacco, rides on the tractor, and establishing the work ethic of a farmer at an early age. At the age of 11, he moved to Daytona, Florida, where he developed his love of the ocean, and he learned various occupational skills. He's still the best painter that I think any of us have ever met in our lives. He could cut in like no one else I've seen. Stock car racing, especially on the beach, and then ultimately at Daytona Speedway, working near that Union 76 sign. It was there that he became close with his Aunt Joey, Josephine Marshall, Uncle Si, Cyril Marshall, and his cousins Sandy, Pat, and Janice. Theirs was a bond that lasted until his dying day. They loved each other immensely. After graduating from Florida Military School in DeLand, Florida, Dad attended Florida State University and graduated with a degree in criminology. After college, he joined the U.S. Army and attended Ranger School at Fort Benning, Georgia. And in '68 and '69, he served our country as lieutenant of a mechanized platoon in the 5th Infantry Division. He later served as captain of the military police at Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, Germany from 1970 to 71. Upon returning home, Dad spent 3 years serving as the executive director of junior achievement of Broward County, amongst a few other jobs in Clearwater. And he then settled into a rewarding career, 30-year career as an insurance agent affiliated with AXA Equitable. He met my mom in the early 70s, and they settled in Miami to start a family. My memories of my childhood are full of laughter and getting out and doing. He was always a proponent of doing things. Outdoors and indoors, auto shows, going to the beach, going camping, fishing in the Everglades, and doing it together as a family. And while my parents divorced when I was 6, I never looked back on that time as traumatic. And that's something for which I'm thankful to both my mom and my dad. They were always cordial with one another, they were respectful, and they were inclusive of me, and they were compassionate towards each other. I consider myself extremely fortunate to have parents of their caliber, and that is their collective doing. In the late 90s, my dad met Linda Midland, and they hit it off from the first meeting at Fort Lauderdale OK Tire. She was the perfect match to put up with his stubbornness, and was also a wonderful partner who was very welcoming to me and my family. I truly appreciate your love for him and for taking care of him all these years. Dad's death was unexpected and sudden. 73 years is indeed too young to pass for someone so vibrant, so impactful, so loved. He passed peacefully though, surrounded by those that loved him, and I'm grateful that I was able to hold his hand as he left and have him hopefully know that I was there for him as he always was for me. I was and still am devastated, but I will tell you this. The outpouring of love and sympathy from all of you and those who could not be here today was nothing less than astounding. It was the stories of how he affected each and every one of you. How he was able to make your lives better in some small or grandiose way. He taught me that to get love is to give love, and he gave a ton of it to everyone he knew, including those that he didn't. There are just too many stories to share. There's the note that my good friend Ken sent me the day my dad passed, reminiscing about the tool chest and the DeWalt tools that my dad gave him for his graduation from college. He sent me a picture of his 2 sons 20 years later using those same tools to build the soapbox derby car in Ken's garage. Dad's legacy lives on in them. There are the comments from my old high school friends remembering him picking up the tab for the entire drama club at Denny's after one of their high school performances. And the stories of him helping out his neighbors with projects, lending them his tools, sometimes not getting them back, or battening down the hatches prior to an incoming hurricane. And my mom recollected the time at the Fort Lauderdale International Airport when one of the employees commented on how nice my dad's hat was. So my dad took it off his head and gave it to the man, walked away. But perhaps the encounter that got to me the most, however, was when my mom, Kirk, and I went to the local Enterprise rent-a-car after coming back from Orlando. And some of you may know my dad passed in Orlando, and we ultimately came back down to South Florida. And as we entered the rent-a-car place, Mr. Larry Smith was one of the folks behind the counter that day. And upon hearing the news, he was visibly shaken. And he said, "Not Mr. Moore, the man in the cowboy hat?" "Yes, Mr. Moore." He said he was so happy and so nice and such an inspiration to me. He said he went out of his way to talk to us when he came in. And then Larry came around from the desk, and big, tall, strapping guy. He may be here today. I don't know if he is. And he gave my mom and I a hug. And with tears in his eyes, he said, "If you guys need anything, please let me know. Your dad was a great man." Now, I'm sure my dad only had a few times talking to Larry during Larry's tenure there, but their interaction embodied what my dad was all about. It matters how you make others feel. Larry's compassion to me and my mom was a direct result of my dad's compassion to him. And that story will sustain me until the day I die. It was truly uplifting, especially in a time of sadness for us. As some of you know, my dad passed away on Labor Day, and we felt it fitting to honor him today, or on Veterans Day weekend, for today's gathering. As a captain in the U.S. Army and Vietnam veteran, my father was both a hero for our country and a proud American, a very proud American. We should all be incredibly grateful for his service, and service was always important to him, and he was also a very proud Army Ranger, too. For as long as I can remember, my dad would take the Amtrak train to Washington, D.C. each Veterans Day to honor his military brethren, his country, and three of the men closest to him that tragically lost their lives: Gary Corey, Johnny Stevens, and William Wong. As the picture in the program captures so beautifully, he would visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall and find their names each time. By the way, that picture, my friend April found it as she Googled my dad's name, and there it was, and a few others, taken by a beat reporter back about 6 years ago in D.C. And if you know my dad, he was pretty private about that trip. It was always him. He went by himself, and he came back, sometimes the same day. He just needed to go. But I'm so pleased that she was able to find that picture and that series of pictures. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. Extremely touching, and the photographer deserves an award, in my opinion. As a father now, I recognize what a good dad my dad has always been to me. He was always there for me when I needed him. Always. There to offer words of advice. Learn Mandarin. Words of counsel, this too shall pass. Or offering a helping hand. As some of you know out there, he could utilize the space in the back of a U-Haul better than anyone I've ever seen. And he was an even better granddad to my two daughters, Maddie and Mackenzie, who are here today. And Linda's granddaughter, Amelia. Patient, kind, loving, and always teaching. What a teacher he was. Everything was a teachable moment, even hugs, teaching that they should be tight and long in duration. My girls especially love that. And silly? Oh, was he silly. And it was appreciated and welcomed, especially when going out to dinner, ordering pizza at a burger joint, or pizza at an ice cream joint, or pizza at a Chinese place. Or listening to him do his rendition of Dr. Seuss stories, or the poem by Lewis Carroll, The Jabberwocky. And thanks to him, all kids know who Yehudi is. If you don't know who Yehudi is, ask my girls later, and they'll tell you the secret. Now, Dad was a pretty good guy, but as some of you can attest here, he could also be a pain in the butt, too. Hard-headed, you say? Opinionated, you say? Until I was in my teens, I thought there was only one way to do things, which, of course, is his way. I know Kirk, Linda, Sandy, and my mom have all been well-versed in the right way to do things. Bless you all. A funny story about his dedication and devotion to lawn care came to mind recently. You see, at a young age, I was introduced to the lawnmower, edger, rake, and broom. Saturday mornings in our little Miami house weren't spent watching Bugs Bunny, unless there was a thunderstorm. They were spent doing yard work, something that was instilled in him in his youth on the farm. Damn farm. And yard work was to be done with pride and attention to detail. Well, one day after mowing and edging the sidewalks, I was sweeping the sidewalks. And back in those days, blowers weren't really a thing, so you had to take the side of the broom and kind of dig out the grass clippings from the edge and sweep them into a pile to be picked up later. Well, I was tired. It had been a long morning, and this routine had grown a bit long in the tooth. So I did as any 12-year-old would do. I swept the clippings deeper into the edge of the grass and just kind of moved them over, creating a mess. Not a very neat look. But it was lunchtime, and I mean, who would notice anyway? Dad. That's who noticed. He saw this amazing feat of laziness, and with the intent of using it as a teaching moment, told me, "Son, you either do a job right or you don't do it at all." "Fine," I said, "I'm not going to do it at all." A back and forth ensued, culminating in me back-talking with something that I'm sure wasn't very nice. And I saw the switch flip. Some of you have seen that switch. His eyes grew wide and he started for me. I think with the hopes of catching my earlobe. But I did as any 12-year-old would do in that situation. I owned up to the error of my ways and I respectfully apologized. Or more factually, I turned around and took off running. There I was, rounding the houses of Miami with him in hot pursuit and with the most unpleasant scowl on his face. At that time, our neighborhood had small houses set on half-acre lots with no fences, so you could run for a long time. Quite a ways, actually. After passing house number 3, I turned back to see him gaining on me. I guess I'll just have to keep running until dark, I thought. But after rounding house number 5, I looked back to see him struggling just a bit, huffing and puffing, but still in hot pursuit. 2 houses from home, and I looked back to see him cracking a smile and starting to laugh, as if he were starting to acknowledge this rite of passage. And by the time we reached the house again, I had slowed just enough that he caught up to me, tackling me. We both crashed to the ground, laughing uncontrollably. I, of course, ended up apologizing. It was a hilarious moment and one I'll never forget. I'm sure afterwards we enjoyed a couple of White Rock cream sodas together and a bag of hot Doritos warmed by the baking sun, a ritual of ours. We used to take a bag of Doritos back when it had a little window cut in it, and you could put it on the sidewalk and let it sit there for about an hour, and they would taste like they're freshly baked. Try it, it's pretty awesome. And amazingly today, I love doing yard work. Who would figure? And Maddie and Mackenzie have proven to be huge helpers in the garden too. He was also a bit mischievous too. I remember one time he came up to a football game at the University of Florida, Florida Field. There he was, in the student section, with me and my buddies, passing around his FSU ring. Also the last time you'll see me wearing it. Some of you remember this. Knocking on the door with the edge of this. That's the ring from a real school, he told everybody. He's passing it down the road. I told him, I said, there's no way you're getting that ring back, Dad. That's gone. And of course, he made 20 Gator friends in the process. And it was hilarious. And people are still talking about that. On the day he passed, FSU beat Ole Miss 45-34. I'm betting he may have had something to do with that. My last conversation with my dad was a couple of weeks before he passed, and I have to say, it was a great one. As some of you may know, his hearing loss had gotten progressively worse, and phone conversations with him weren't the easiest. A lot of slow talking and repeating yourself. But this call wasn't like that. For some reason, we were able to communicate quite well, possibly because of the new technology he had that would throw the caller's words up on the TV screen. In any event, we talked for a while about his health, what was going on in my life. And of course, he asked about his granddaughters, as he always did, wanting to know how they were doing, how school was going for them, and what kind of mischief they were getting into. We talked about my recent work trip to Washington, D.C., and my visit to the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Vietnam Wall. I told him how moving it was and how much I appreciated his service, which I would do from time to time. And we shared some laughs about his forgetting his cane and leaving it places. I think there are still probably 4 canes hidden precariously somewhere around Fort Lauderdale and Atlanta. Forcing him to buy a new one from time to time. We talked about Murphy, the old Jeep, named Murphy because Murphy's Law would prove that something will always go wrong with that darn thing. We talked about how it was running today. And he told me about his latest projects with Kirk down the street, his tone of pride shining through of their accomplishments. And we ended the call as we often did. I'm proud of you, son. I love you. I'm proud of you, Dad. I love you too. I miss my dad now, and I will miss him forever. But I am so very proud of him. He was able to overcome a lot of adversity in his life, and he was able to genuinely help others, sometimes despite the pain that he was going through. His legacy and spirit lives on in each one of us. We were all lucky to have known him, and hopefully we can pass his spirit on to others. So when we leave here today, I'd like to ask you to do me a favor, and quite possibly a favor for my dad as well. At least once a week, think of my dad, and try to be a character for a brief moment or two. Smile, stand out, make someone stay better, and make them feel like they matter. Because in the end, it's ultimately about what you've done for others and how you made them feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for sharing with us from your heart and the reflection back. This morning, as we move forward in our service, we have a couple individuals that will speak in a time of opening, but I'm going to invite Amelia, that she would come forward and share.
I would like to read a poem called The Final Inspection. The soldier stood and faced his God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining, just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, soldier, how shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? And to my church have you been true? The soldier squared his shoulders and said, No, Lord, I guess I ain't, because those of us who carry guns can't always be safe. I've had to work most Sundays, and at times my talk is tough, and sometimes I've been violent because the streets were awfully rough. But I never took a penny, that wasn't mine to keep. Those I worked a lot of overtime when the bills just got too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, although at times I shook with fear, and sometimes, God forgive, I wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here that never wanted me around except to calm their fears. If you have a place for me here, O Lord, it needn't be so grand. I've never expected or had so much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was a silence all around the throne, for the saints had often trod, as the soldier waited quietly for the judgment from his God. Step forward now, you soldier, you've borne your burdens well. Walk peacefully on heaven's streets, you've done your time in hell. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, for reading that poem and sharing that with us. We're going to take a moment here, and if you would like to share a reflection or an event or an encounter that you had with Bud, this is a great time to do that. You're welcome to come forward and share with us here.
Good morning. I'm Kirk. It was an honor and a privilege to be friends with Bud. I didn't meet Bud. We moved into the neighborhood at the same time. 2003, was it, Rita? 2002? And I would see Bud drive down my street in a beautiful Bronco, white hat, beautiful beard. And he always acknowledged me, but we didn't talk. And I was helping a friend take a Jeep up to North Carolina on a trailer. And we were in Fort Pierce having breakfast, getting ready to have breakfast, and Bud pulled in. And so we walked in, I said to my friend, I said, I think that's my neighbor. So Bud walked in, and I said, excuse me, you live in Fort Lauderdale? And he walked up to the table and he said, who wants to know? I said, well, I think you're my neighbor. And so we talked and we had breakfast. And so a week later, he drove past my house and he stopped and talked to me for a second. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I've got a problem with my house. My kitchen is sinking because I'm above grade, if anybody knows what that means. He did. And so he drove home, and next thing I know, he came back, he had a pickaxe over his shoulder, and a hammer in his other hand. And Bud helped me for 5 weeks rebuild my kitchen, and we've been friends ever since. And we argue, not argue, we have discussions, because, as Robert said, Bud knows it all. But he was just a great friend and a great American, and he was Bud, and I'm getting a little emotional, so it was the jackpot for me to have him as a friend. Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt, for sharing.
Tom Jean, I'm from South Deerfield, and Bud lived with us a couple summers when he was young. His parents shipped him up to us. He was a city slicker from Springfield at that time. And my father sort of straightened him out a little bit. And he mentioned the ear. My father did that. And he did the Bud. I remember one occasion, we went to the dump. We had our old truck, a 47 Chevy, still there in the barn. And my father had a 12-gauge shotgun, double barrel. And Bud said, "Well, how do you shoot it?" My father says, "Pull both triggers." He had a little lesson on how to shoot a gun at that age. Yeah, you know, like he was a teenager or something like that. And there was a lot of other life lessons that my father sort of imparted upon him. And I'm sure he shared those, but he was a great cousin, really miss him. And so, a little South Deerfield story.
Hi, my name's Larry Schroeder, and I know Bud from Berlin. We ran the Special Operations Branch in Berlin for about 2 years together. He then went on to to command the MP Company, and then I went to Vietnam. Bud came from Vietnam to Berlin, and the first thing I can remember about Bud Moore is he had a blue Porsche. He was so proud of that blue Porsche. Well, he ordered it when he was coming home from Vietnam. They had a deal, discount, you didn't have to pay the tax. So he orders it. Gets home, changed his orders. He's going to Berlin. His car's coming to Miami. Okay? So the car comes to Miami. He pays to have it then shipped from Miami back to Bremerhaven. We go pick it up. We bring it in. Now, he paid for this car, we kidded about the discount, but he's already a year old before I think he got it. Okay? But he took great pleasure on the Autobahn. The old East German police had these old Russian cars, and if you really, downhill with a good wind, maybe 85 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. Well, Bud used to get big kick out of pulling up next to him, we'd wave. And then off we'd go. The lights would come on and they'd be chasing us, and then you could just see him kind of disappearing in the sunset. Okay? The other great story with Bud is we played Ranger at night after we'd had a few. Okay? And running the checkpoints it was interesting. We controlled all access now. Brennan was we at checkpoint Alpha Bravo Charlie, an escalade called Steinstucken, and then the trains. We ran the train from Bremerhaven to Berlin about twice a month. We had a sergeant named Pellegrini from Niagara Falls, New York, never forget him. He looked like a recruiting poster. This kid shined. At night, you could pick him out. Okay? His tour was coming up, and in Steinstucken was actually 1 kilometer in East Germany. Nobody heard about it, knows about it. It was about 350 people, 35, 40 families. It was part of the German voting district in Berlin, and when Berlin was divided by the 4 powers, it was divided based on the original German voting districts. So in 1961, they found out that this area, Steinstucken, belonged to Zehlendorf, which was in the U.S. sector. We sent MPs in and said this belongs to the U.S. Okay? The Russians and East Germans didn't build a wall around it, and there were East German railroad tracks right through the middle of it, this little village. They could work in Berlin. We negotiated, had access rights. We only could win by air. So we would fly 3 MPs in there, okay, every 2 weeks or so. And because of weather, sometimes we couldn't fly, so they had an account with this little like 7-Eleven, little corner store. No cigarettes, no booze, all right? Because we sent the food in with them. So one night, about 3 in the morning, Bud and I had been out drinking, playing Ranger, coming home. through the bushes, through the BOQs, through the 40th Armor, because the tanks were all running 24/7. Okay, so we get in, and there's a phone call. And it was from the State Department saying we needed to get in right now. Because we had a big problem, we had to write a letter that had to be screened to be sent to the Soviet embassy. Sergeant Pellegrini, who was in charge of the 2 other MPs, and they lived in the basement of the mayor of the little village's house, her name was Frau Bowman, had shot out every tower light around that compound. Okay? And Bud and I are looking about, well, we're both going to Vietnam. Again, we're going early this time. Okay? So we were at 4 o'clock in the morning, hadn't been drinking, writing this apology that was going over to the State Department, to the Eastern Affairs section, to be sent to the Soviet embassy, explaining why our young sergeant had done this deed. And we thought when we finally got in the morning, that was the end. It wasn't the end. We actually had one other one, and then I won't bore you anymore. We had one other fiasco, I think, if I can put that one together, that was involved Checkpoint Charlie. They were exfiltrating people in and out through Checkpoint Charlie. We knew it was done. We knew soldiers were being paid. Okay? So we ran a couple operations with the special ops kind of deal, and caught a few people who were involved in this, and involved a couple of officers. They were getting about $5,000 a shot to sneak somebody back, okay? But you never knew, so we bust a car, and you never knew if anybody was in it or not, okay? And actually the guy bringing it through from the checkpoint didn't know either. So this went on, and this went on, and I finally was out there one night, and it was one of his buddies that he hung with who got involved in this. So we kind of kept it from Bud. We didn't let him know. We set up the operation, and we made the bus, okay? I don't think Bud was sober for 18, 20 hours out of that one. It just blew his mind. Not that he did it, but that he befriended this guy, okay? And he didn't figure it out. He couldn't accept that. And one big thing you always did with Bud more in the service, his math was not his big thing. Okay? So we always wrote on everything, and as a joke for him was rate times time equals distance. Okay? Or we'd move the formula around. It used to be fun. So just a couple quips on Bud Moore from the 1969-70.
I don't know if I should stand behind this. You may have seen me. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Liu. Everything that, first of all, your speech was very good. I mean, you were very eloquent. I can't be as eloquent as Robert, but I've known Robert and the family since I was a freshman in college. And everything Robert says about Mr. Moore is totally true. But the one thing that I do remember about him saying to me, because I am from Vietnam, and he said to me, I remember after coming back from the war, he had a lot of dreams and nightmares and problems as a consequence of the war. And one of the things he said to me was, you know what, I know it was a hard time in the war, but I'm glad that I did it because it brought you to us. And it was one of the most special things he's ever said to me, because I had to escape my country when I was a young little girl. I was 3 years old. And I know that everyone that has been in the war has gone through a lot, but because of him and because of everyone who fought in the war, I'm very appreciative, but I love him so much more because he took something that was really horrible and made it special. And he's just one of the most loving people I've ever met. I love all his antics. I love his intelligence. I love his strictness. And he just is a wonderful person, and I wish I could have spent more time with him. But it's been a wonderful day. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment?
I'm Bud's cousin Diane, again from South Deerfield. Bud gave me the task of doing the family reunion and keeping track of the family and the numbers and whatnot. In the Bars side of the family, that would have been his mom. There was 11 brothers and sisters, and from there was 30 of us, Bud, myself, and then Robert's generation, it goes to 65. And then Madison and Mackenzie, it goes to 72, something to that effect. But Bud would always tell all of us, we need to have a family reunion. Diane, you plan it. So one wedding, Barb Shrine, Barb, I forgot who else was there, but we all planned this family reunion to be back in Deerfield. And there was over 100 of us on the original homestead. It was great to see Robert and Bev and everybody else, and we took pictures and played baseball, softball, volleyball, and to see Bud was just so proud of his family, and he always said, I could be sitting at a ball game and I could have a relative sitting right next to me because there were so many of us, but he just cared so deeply about all of us. And we did say the next one party was going to be at his house. He said, yeah, sure, you plan it, you do it all, and we'll be all, come on down. So that was Bud. He was just, wonderful, 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 as you all know. Thank you.
Good morning. I hadn't planned on doing this, but with Bud, it's all about the stories, as we've heard. And some of them just need to be said because they need to be remembered forever. My name's David Schwab. I worked with Bud at Axe Equitable for 26 years. And the first time I ever met Bud, I actually didn't see him, I heard him. It was one of my first days at the office, and I actually heard somebody very upset. And they were storming around the office, couldn't figure out why. And it turned out Bud, at the time, Bud's hair went white earlier than some others went. So he was very upset because he went to McDonald's and the clerk had offered him the senior citizen discount. He was probably 47 years old. I mean, he was so upset, I didn't think he was going to get over that. It led to a lot of other things, though. You've heard all the things about how helpful and caring Bud was. Just a couple other things. Bud and I had a tradition every year where I would call him on Memorial Day instead of Veterans Day. And, at first he thought it was kind of odd, but then he would always laugh because I'd say, Bud, I'm calling you, I know it's not Veterans Day, I know it's Memorial Day, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm glad that you are still alive. But I know there's those of you that were very close to you that you did lose on this day. And he would always chuckle about that because he said nobody ever called me and told me, hey, thanks that he survived and actually hundreds of people. And then, Bud would show up at our office and towards after his retirement, the only time I would see him is when every month or two I'd see the white hat above the cubicles moving across because he was called to do that, and I would keep a bag at home and joy in my drawer because dealing with the diabetes, he would candy once in a while. But we would talk about, he loved old war movies and he knew all the lines to Patton and Midway and all these other things, and we'd go, and I was one of the other few people that would know those lines or even understand what he was talking about. But what always bothered him when he came to the office is, talked about the hearing loss earlier, so being a ranger, that was tough. So when I would come up and I'd see the hat, I'd come up behind him and I'd say, hey Bud, a lot of times he would jump and be startled. And first he'd be mad, and then he'd say, nobody sneaks up on a ranger. And he said, but then he knew I was part Indian, and then he would laugh, because he'd say, only an Indian can sneak up on a ranger. So with that being said, and the last thing that I wanted to say is, it was very strange, because we would go places, my wife and family, and I would run into people and they would know who we were before we met them and couldn't figure it out. And there was a time, my wife and I, for some reason, decided to adopt a lot of children from different parts of the world. We were foster parents. And so finally, I asked these people, how do you know, they said, oh, well, you Bud Moore. And I said, well, how does that happen? So I went and I asked him one time, and I said, Bud, what are you doing? What are you telling these people? And he reached down and he grabbed his wallet, and he flipped it out, and here's a picture of my wife holding, with 4 or 5 kids. There's a little boy from Haiti, and there's 2 Russian kids, and a little Hispanic girl, and so forth. And he'd say, this is what I show everybody, because when they start kicking me off about talking about religion and how to act and how to do things, I just whip this out and show them. I say, this is religion. He says, end of story. And that would shut down the conversation. So we love Bud, greatly miss him, and fantastic family, the legacy that he'll always have.
I've got one more. I'm another cousin, and I'm from Rochester, New York. And I don't know if you know about, when your grandmother, when Beanie would have been her 100th birthday, Bud called my mom, who was probably 90 at the time, and just because he wanted to reach out, I think, to the family, and just so have someone to talk to, maybe, and I just didn't know if you knew that. And also, Bud wasn't supposed to be the first cousin born. My oldest brother was supposed to be born before Bud, and I don't think Bud ever let Jay forget that. And he was born 2 weeks, I think, before Jay was born, and so the story went on after that.
I want to make sure that you have an opportunity you want to share. As we remember and reflect, I'm going to invite Mickey Wright to come forward and share with you.
We were wondering why it was so crowded. Come and find out everybody's related to him. Roll call. Captain Ziegelman. Here, Chief. Gunner's Mate First Class Smith.
Here, Chief.
Lieutenant Colonel Schroeder. Here, Chief. Captain Moore. Captain Earl Moore. Captain Earl Edwin, also known as Bud Moore Jr.
Bud's no longer with us, Chief.
Captain Bud Moore, United States Army Ranger, was born May 20th, 1943, and served his final mission on September 5th, 2016. If you'd like to join me in a salute for Bud, please stand up. Room, Lieutenant Hood. Present arms. Rangers lead the way. Order arms.
Thank you. You may be seated. In life, I never had the privilege of meeting Bud, but through your sharing of stories and accounts and Robert's eulogy, I get a sense of who the person was and is. You know, on September 5th, 2016, Bud started a new journey of his life. For the past few months and the days ahead, you have experienced peace and you'll experience comfort, which is a wonderful gift from God. As a person of faith, I rely heavily upon the words I find in the Scriptures. Some are the words that Jesus spoke, and some are the words that the psalmist David wrote. Jesus said, I will never leave you or forsake you. I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. David, through his experiences, through not only combat and war, but running from Saul, who was trying to kill him, wrote these words from a cave. God is a refuge and strength and ever-present help in times of trouble. Today, as we gather here, there is still grief, but grief will turn to comfort, and over time, as you reflect, you will recall and remember the stories that will give you a smile. And as Robert encouraged you to do once a week, remember Bud and act a little different. Be a little different. Enjoy life. You know, each day is a gift from God, and Solomon wrote the words in Ecclesiastes about for everything there is a season. A time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up, and a time to cry and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. As we all know, life is a journey. The journey is really enjoyable if you do it with friends and family, as attested to all that are here today who encountered Bud. But life is also a journey with God. In kind of thinking about today, and I had a privilege of reading Robert's eulogy before today, which gave me a wonderful sense of who Bud was and is. And I've reflected upon a scripture that's found in the Gospel of Matthew, and it's an encounter that Jesus had with a lawyer. I don't know if there's any lawyers in here, but you get picked on sometimes, right? But anyway, there was an attorney or a lawyer, and he came to Jesus one day and asked Christ this statement. He said, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus spoke from the heart, and simply said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. Now Jesus could have stopped there, and that would probably have been sufficient, right? Just to love God with everything. But Jesus did not stop there, because there's something else as far as love. And then Jesus proceeded to say, he said, the second commandment is like it. You shall love thy neighbor as thyself. Loving God with all your heart is one thing. But learning to love others is something else. In 1 Corinthians 13, and for some reason it gets quoted a lot at weddings, and I've been guilty of that as well. But 1 Corinthians 13 is not about weddings. It's about what's important in life. Hear these words. Paul writes, if I could speak all the languages of earth and angels, but I didn't have love, I'm only a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy and I could understand all of God's secrets and possess all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but I didn't love others, I would be nothing. Because love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable, does not keep a records of wrongs. It does not rejoice about the injustices, but rejoice whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless, but love will last forever. Now, our knowledge that we have is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only part of the whole picture. But when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzle reflections in a mirror, but then we shall see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. Three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of all of these is love. I think Bud knew something about love. Many of you today have shared your reflections and memories and served as a witness of the love that Bud showed you, the acceptance, the appreciation. My challenge to you that remain is this: may you remain keep the faith and share with one another the love that Bud exhibited. May you be graciously trust God on the next journey that Bud is on, the journey that's in the presence of a faithful and loving God and Savior. If you don't remember anything, remember three things. The three things that will last forever: your faith, your hope, and your love. But above all things, love is the greatest. Bud is now on another journey. The journey after this life. The life that comes after death. And earlier, as I read the 23rd Psalm, it's a psalm that reminds us that God is present. May those of you remain, take hope in the assurances that are given to us, that you can turn Bud back to God, our Creator. To his son Robert, to his beautiful granddaughters Madison and Mackenzie, get a lovely smile. Lovely smile. To his domestic partner Linda and her family, to his ex-wife Beverly, to his cousins who have spoken, and our family members and aunts and uncles. Trust God and reflect on these words that are found in Romans 8. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future nor any power, neither height nor depth or anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is found in Christ Jesus our Lord. And remember these words that Jesus spoke on the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are those that mourn, for you shall be comforted. May God grant you peace. May He bless you, and may His countenance shine upon you. Let us pray. Oh, gracious God, we thank you for the life that we have witnessed, for the sharing of stories and recollection, and for the witness of Bud's life that he had. And now, may the Father, from whom every family in heaven and earth is named, according to the riches of God's glory, grant to all that are here to be strengthened with might through God's Spirit in your inner being, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that being rooted in granted love, be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with the fullness of God. Amen. I'm going to invite Robert to come forward and share with you where you would like individuals to meet and continue to share. Keep hope, faith, and love alive. May God bless you.
Well, thank you everybody for coming and your time here today. As you know, my dad spent a good bit of time at the American Legion Post 36 over here on State Road 84, not too far from a Little Red Barbecue, where he frequented quite a bit and had some breakfast there from time to time. We'd like for anybody that has the opportunity and time to come on over. We're having a very casual affair over there from about 1 o'clock on. I think we may go to 5 or 6 o'clock. So as you find time, please come on over. We're going to have a lot of good food, good conversation, and I'd love to hear some more stories about that, especially Larry. I want to hear some more about that, about the blue Porsche on the Autobahn. I know there's some stuff you can't share. But again, I appreciate everybody coming. The address to where we're going is on the program at the bottom. If you don't have it, there are a couple more programs over there if you need to know. But again, thank you everybody for coming and showing respect to my dad. Thank you.